Hi, everyone. This is Daniel Burke, and we are here for the third edition of the World Land Bridge program, the World Land Bridge show on the LaRouche Organization YouTube and website. And welcome. We're going to have a conversation tonight with someone who I've gotten to know over the course of a couple of conversations, Geoff Young, who just recently won his primary as a Democrat in Kentucky for the U.S. House in the 6th District. So this is a very exciting development, and we're going to talk to him from the standpoint of the LaRouche movement effort and our intention, which is to bring about a new paradigm, to try to figure out how to create the conditions where we can get out of the danger of nuclear war, where we can put this bankrupt system into reorganization, and we can revive international law and really, do good for humanity. So that's the intention. And so we'll be talking to him in just a moment. And then later on in the discussion, we're going to talk to Liam Murphy in Arizona, and he has been actually putting together kind of a way of presenting what LaRouche's outlook is in terms of the distinction between a republic and an empire. And then finally, we're going to hear from our friend Sebastian Acosta in Colombia. And he's going to give us an update. He's part of the working with the LaRouche movement in Colombia. And he's going to be giving us an update on the state of the World Land Bridge from that perspective. And all of this is sort of feeding into our international conference of June 18 and June 9th, hosted by the Schiller Institute, which I just want to briefly show people where you can subscribe for this and register. There can be no peace without the bankruptcy reorganization of the dying transatlantic financial system. That's the name of the conference. That's the intention. You can read the invitation and participate on June 18th and 19th. Okay, so having said that, I want to go back and talk with, I want to start our conversation with Geoff. And please, as people are watching, we want you to participate as much as possible. All right, here we go. Hi, Geoff, are you there? Uh-oh, do we have some kind of a, did he drop off? I just heard him. Okay, well, we're going to have to see. He had to rejoin last time. Oh, good, there he is. Good. Okay, great, there we are. Hi, Geoff, how are you? Geoff Young, welcome.
Doing fine. I've been hearing a delayed echo, though.
Okay, an echo.
Yeah, I'm here.
What if we, let's see, a delayed echo. Do you have anything open in terms of like a window on your on your desktop? Yeah, you may be watching the stream by accident. That would cause it. Okay,
yeah,
good.
I had another window open, right. Sorry.
No problem. Welcome, Geoff, and congratulations on your primary victory.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Good. Okay, well, I'll get right into it because we talked about a series of questions, and the first one that comes to mind is, of course, you and I think are of the same opinion that the neoliberal system is coming to an end. And I'd like to ask you to talk to the audience and tell us what you think. What does that mean to you? What's happening in the broadest strategic sense, and how do you reflect on it?
Okay, well, I don't use the word neoliberal. What I think is coming to an end is the unipolar system in the world, whereby the United States, ever since 1945, right after World War II, and its allies, whoever those may have been at any given time, have behaved as if they run the world. And that is coming to an end. What we have is a multipolar world now. I think it's already happened. It's either completely occurred or it's in the process rapidly of happening, whereby there are many major powers, there are many regions of the world, for example, China, Russia, are other poles in this system, the new system. Well, it's really the old system. The unipolar dominance by one country is very unusual, almost unique in world history. The norm is a multipolar world where there are various countries and they all interact, basically treat each other as equals, more or less. And so that has reasserted itself, has come back again after 75 years of dominance by the United States mainly. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, tell me more about that. How do you... I guess the question that I have, which is to be direct, is in a multipolar world, does that mean blocks again?
It might. I don't know. So during the Cold War, the first Cold War, from, let's say, 1946 to 1991.
Okay, hold on. We got our other guest is having trouble here.
That's a record.
Yeah. There we go. Got it. Okay, keep going, please. Pardon me for that.
Oh, I'm still hearing it. Let's see if I have anything else open.
No, I think we fixed it. So you were saying that in the Cold War we did have blocks. How would this be? How do you see the multipolar world working differently?
Okay, so please ask that again.
I posed to you that the question of multipolarity is this blocks. And you said, well, you were referencing the Cold War. Please continue.
All right, well, of course, the Cold War was a pretty tense period. I grew up, I was 6 years old when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. That was a Cold War incident that, we came very close to a full-scale nuclear war that would eventually have ended human life on Earth if the Cuban Missile Crisis hadn't been resolved to a degree when it was. That was extremely dangerous. So, a Cold War is not a walk in the park. But
yeah, I agree.
The unipolar world, which is what mainly we've had since World War II, is inherently unstable. I mean, what gives any one country, the United States in this case, the right to dominate everybody else? That's a recipe for continued conflict, where countries try to assert their independence from the empire, and the empire tries to stop them or overthrow their government or whatever. The continuing battle of that basically reduces to military force. So the United States today is still the only country in the world that has 800 or 900 military bases scattered all over the planet. A lot of them surrounding Russia, surrounding China. You see these maps online that say, Iran is a threat to security because look how close they are to all our bases. And so that's very unstable. It's unjust. The vision of the UN Charter of the United Nations
Yes.
that formed in 1945 was a community of nations that would resolve the conflicts that inevitably occur. Conflicts just happen. Okay, that can't be helped. But the UN was to make sure that they were settled without force and violence and warfare. Now, since 1945, the United States has been the worst violator of the UN Charter. The country where I was born and grew up is the worst violator, the most aggressive imperialist power in the world today. And the main reason I'm running for Congress is to see if we can drop our empire, go with this multipolar arrangement, and retain a republic, a constitutional republic. So the headline for this conversation was about saving the republic, or remind me what
the old Ben Franklin comment. It's a republic if you can keep it.
Right. Okay. So right now, I think the greatest threat to the American republic is the American empire.
Well, I want to say right off the bat that I think that your commitment to running, the way that you're approaching your efforts in the 6th District in Kentucky, and your contributions to the Republic, your leadership in the Republic, so to speak, I think this is the right way to do it. I know you've been running every 2 years since 2012, and you're not running because you're trying to, what I understand, so you tell me if I'm on the right track here, is that you're not running because you're trying to get a place in the Congress. It's what you just said. You're running because you're trying to end this imperial policy of the United States and bring about a different era. And go on, please.
Well,
you want a place in the Congress, and people should put you in the Congress, but the reason they're going to do that is because you're committed to leadership and not to donors and parties and frauds like that.
Exactly. I could do a lot of different things with the rest of my life, but dialing for dollars from lobbyists and big donors is not how I want to spend my remaining years on this earth. I'm trying to inject a voice in Washington that, look, our empire is going to fall, whether we like it or want it or not. It's going to fall. It's falling now. It's collapsing. And we can take an attitude of, oh no, that's the end of the world. We have to claw the empire back and try to retain it at all costs, no matter how many people get killed. Okay, we have a choice. We can say that, or we can say, fine, let's be graceful about this. Pull back our troops, bring all our troops home, turn all those bases back over to the countries that they're in, and make our constitutional republic better. With all the resources we've been wasting on wars and weapons since 1945, we could make this country a much better place to live, much more cooperative, equal society. We don't have to cling to this idea that America has to dominate. That's a very dangerous assumption to make.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's completely if you look at the history, I have a list here, which I'm sure is not complete, of imperial wars executed by the United States since the founding of the United Nations, right, in 1944, by the actions of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a fervent opponent of colonialism, a fervent opponent of imperial wars. In fact, he stated directly, as it's recorded in this book, As He Saw It, which is a book written by his son, who was at these meetings of the Big Three with Franklin, that Franklin said, the colonial system means war. If you do not have economic development all across the world, you will have wars. And if we go this way, you're headed towards not simply wars, but World War III, which is exactly where we find ourselves today. So here's the list. Iran, 1946, Korea, 1950, Vietnam, 1955, Laos, 1953, Lebanon, 1958, Bay of Pigs, 1961, Dominican Republic, 1965, Cambodia, 1967, Grenada, 1983, First Libya War, 1986, Panama, 1989, First Gulf War, 1990, Somalia, 1992, Bosnia, 1992, Haiti, 1994, Kosovo, 1998, Afghanistan, 2001, the Second Iraq War, 2003, Somalia, 2007, the Second Libya War, 2011, Uganda, 2011, the Third Iraq War, 2014, and Syria, 2014, and then a continuation in Libya in 2015. So this is, I mean, the fact that this is what our nation has been doing for since in that entire period, for nearly a century, finally we're reaching a period of reckoning. But I want to post it. Yeah.
We can't keep it up. We can't maintain it. We can't afford it. The rest of the world is sick and tired of having our troops or special forces, CIA, running around their countries.
Yes.
It's unsustainable. And as I mentioned, it's collapsing right now. For example, in Ukraine,
yes.
or Eastern Europe in general. United States is being kicked out of that region, one way or another. United States is going to be kicked out of Syria. We still illegally occupy 1/3 of Syria, the part with the oil and the wheat.
Yes.
Which is really hampering Syria's efforts to recover from the long fight against Islamist terrorism. And we have troops in Iraq. They're going to be kicked out or coerced into leaving one way or another. Iraq's government a couple years ago demanded that our troops leave, and we just ignored them. Iraq is going to get its wish, and those troops are going to come out one way or another. Yeah, we can't sustain it. The world is through with that kind of thing.
I absolutely agree that this thing is totally done. Now, I wanna sort of raise a couple of related questions. One is, it is the thesis of the LaRouche movement that this world war danger that we're in, which is getting worse by the minute, because the very people, it's exactly what you're saying, the very people who they realize that I mean, they're getting forced out, their system is falling apart, but they're not willing to let it go. And that's why you have the threat of thermonuclear war. But it's our thesis, that it's our view strategically, and I think it's very much supportable, that this is because of the economic collapse that has been going on over decades in the Western system, in the transatlantic financial system, in the United States. So tell me, what do you think about that, and how do you look at it?
Well, I see several trends, long-term trends, leading to, for example, the inflation that we're beginning to see in this country. We've just seen the very beginning of it. And the shortages and all that. I think the first cause of the weakening of the U.S. dollar and inflation, and you could say the collapse of our, Wall Street, of our financial system, is the vast overspending and waste on weapons and wars for the last 75 years since World War II ended. That's, I think, one major cause of all of our financial problems today. Second would be mismanagement by the so-called Federal Reserve, which is independent of the federal government. It's a bunch of huge banks that decide, the money supply and have a big effect on the inflation rate, regardless of what any president or any Congress wants to do. So for at least 15 years, they've been mismanaging their job and allowing a huge bubble to be blown up. And third, these economic sanctions that we're applying against Russia in order to somehow cripple their economy, somehow coerce them into doing what we say, and somehow making the Russian people suffer so much that they will rise up and overthrow the current government, the United Russia Party, and Vladimir Putin as its head. So those three things, these sanctions are ill-considered, they're counterproductive. We've been trying to prevent Russia from selling its oil.
Yeah, and then look what's happening.
We can't, it's not possible. They can always build some more pipelines and export their oil to China, India, the rest of Asia, and by ship anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
It's impossible to stop a resource-rich country from selling its resources one way or another. So these sanctions are sanctioning ourselves. We are paying higher prices for gasoline right now because of these thousands of sanctions imposed on Russia, Venezuela, Iran. These are oil-producing countries. We're sanctioning them. Then we expect them to, increase production when it starts to hurt Americans. They're being sanctioned right now. Why should they do anything to help us?
Yeah, I agree with you. And you probably read the comments of Vladimir Putin about the cause of hyperinflation and the food crisis. But I'll read a couple of the items that he stated. Recent comments?
I'm not sure. Can you summarize?
Sure. This was June 3rd on Rossiya TV. He said, as a way to counter the 2020 coronavirus pandemic, and then here's the direct quote, the money supply in the United States grew by 5.9 trillion in less than 2 years, from February 2020 to the end of 2021. Unprecedented productivity of the money printing machines. The total cash supply grew by 38.6%. This is Putin. And then he continued. He said, apparently, the U.S. financial authorities believed the dollar was a global currency, and it would spread as usual as it did in previous years, would dissolve in the global economy, and the United States would not even feel it. But that did not happen, not this time. As a matter of fact, decent people, and there are such people in the United States, the Secretary of the Treasury recently said they had made a mistake. So it was a mistake made by the U.S. financial and economic authorities. It has nothing to do with Russia's actions in Ukraine. It is totally unrelated.
Well, okay, yeah, those seem like sensible comments to me. Yeah, but the sanctions are designed to inflict pain on the Russian people, and I don't think it's possible for that to work. I mean, the ruble now is higher than it's been in, higher value than it's been in years compared to the dollar. So Russia has already survived everything we could throw at them by way of sanctions. And, my opponent in November, Andy Barr, I call him the king of ignorant sanctions because that seems to be the only tool left in Washington's toolkit. At some point, they will or will not realize that it's not working. It's harming us. It's not harming Russia. Not harming China.
Yeah, I think you're right. The situation is that we do not have. In fact, Putin said further that what you're dealing with is a shortage of investment in the world energy sector and price hikes as a result. That's his claim. He says the wind was not as strong as expected during the past year. Winter dragged on and prices instantly soared. I mean, the observation I would make is simply that we are living in a process of massive physical economic degradation over decades in the United States, and also that has been passed on, as Putin is indicating, to the rest of the world. But now the line has been crossed, right? You can no longer keep your foreign exchange reserves in dollars or in euros, as Putin and Medvedev have pointed out, because the United States and the EU have decided that they're just going to steal it from whoever they feel like stealing it from. Which, of course, it's not just like the big bad Russia. The first people that they did this to was Afghanistan, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, and they completely drove the nation into starvation, where perhaps half of the 38 million people in that country are facing very serious hunger epidemic.
Yeah, one of the worst crises in the world, along with Yemen.
Absolutely.
So, I give credit to President Biden for ordering the U.S. military in 2021.
Right.
All U.S. shall be withdrawn from Afghanistan by August 31st, 2021. I think that was probably the best decision he's ever made in his life. But I think the Pentagon, the CIA blew it. The withdrawal was a mess, and I don't think it's Biden's fault. But what is his fault is that he then went along with the idea of punishing Afghanistan for beating us, for kicking us out, and the theft of those, their assets that were deposited overseas. The previous Afghan government, that was just a spiteful thing to do, and it is harming the vast majority of Afghan people right now for no reason other than spite. That's a terrible move, and it does not improve America's reputation in the world.
Well, let's ask I'd like to sort of move to a further point in the question here, which is, given everything that we're discussing and the collapse of the non-existence of international law in this respect, because, the whole purpose of international law was to prevent things from happening like what you just described. What are the prospects for reviving international law? What does that look like? And what are your thoughts?
I have to question part of that assumption. International law is alive and well. The UN Charter has not been repealed, and that's really the foundation stone of international law today. The problem is that the United States and certain favored allies don't think it applies to us.
Right.
We just violate it every day. Sanctions are a violation. Only the UN Security Council is supposed to be allowed to impose sanctions, which can be, and often are, a form of economic warfare targeted at the civilian population. It's illegal. unless the UN Security Council has approved it. And one good thing about the veto of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council is that if the US were to ever bother to go to the UN Security Council and say, look, Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. We have to isolate their economy. Every country in the world should stop trading with Iran. Russia and China and maybe a whole lot of other countries would vote no, and it would be vetoed, and the United States would not get to sanction Iran. So that's a good thing about the veto. It prevents rogue states from doing whatever they want. So, I've thought of various solutions at this point. What could be done? I think if there are enough pro-peace people in Congress, we could get together and say the United States shall withdraw from the UN Security Council as a permanent member and shall remain a member of the General Assembly, shall not take part in any Security Council deliberations or decisions or voting. Just get the U.S. out of there, because we have been the primary violator of international law, especially the law against aggression, since 1945. So, that's a proposal. I don't know when or if it will be enacted, but if the United States did not have a veto in the Security Council, then I think international law would function quite a bit better. And, I suppose Britain could take over for us. But anyway, we would get closer to the vision, the original vision of Franklin Roosevelt when the UN was founded. And it would be more of a means of preventing violence and war going forward.
Well,
solutions, the U.S. should quit NATO. The NATO alliance is long outdated. In 1991, the old USSR disintegrated. The Warsaw Pact ceased to exist, Eastern European countries. And at that time, or 1 or 2 years after that, NATO should have dissolved too. But it didn't. It stayed around and started looking for things to do. And it became a major force for aggression, war, violence, and terrorism, not just in Europe, not just in the North Atlantic, but
everywhere.
All over the world. There are NATO troops in Afghanistan for 20 years. The organization should not exist anymore today. And Europe, the European countries can figure out other ways to ensure their self-defense from any threats they may think they have without U.S. troops, U.S. weapons, or U.S. bases in Europe.
Well, I totally endorse the end of NATO, and I really am glad to hear you state that outlook. And I also think that the reorganization of the United Nations is urgently needed. I'd have to think more. I'm not convinced by the idea of removing the U.S. from that.
What about replacing the U.S. with India?
Well, that's more. Yeah.
Just rotate the U.S. out of the Security Council and put India there.
Well, I think there's a big question about the role of African nations. Why are they not represented in a more serious level? I understand that many African nations have voiced their complaints about this, and there's a lot to be done to address that side of the problem completely, because the problems, I mean, look, the thing that I want to sort of get to is, what is the positive role of the United States? Or in other words, how are we going to solve the big problems? Because what I see is that we have the UN Secretary General has said that he thinks that there's 1.7 billion people who are facing food or going to face food insecurity in a near period of time, meaning they don't know where their next meal might come from, and they don't know if it's coming, and that will eventually, that can become hunger, it can become famine, starvation, mass death. Which of course also the UN head of the Food and Drug the World Food Program, Michael Beasley, has made major comments about David Beasley, So that there's a biblical scale famine is what he stated. I see that this can be solved, but it really does seem to me to be such a big problem that it could only work if the US and China collaborated. I was very interested to read your remarks about the Belt and Road Initiative and the New Silk Road of China in your interview with Covert Action magazine. So please tell us more about your view on this. And I guess my question is, do you think it is possible for the United States to join it in that kind of policy?
Well, starting from where we are today, to address the first question you had, what should the U.S. do now? Basically, back off. Back off.
Yeah.
Get our troops, weapons out of Europe. Get far away from the South China Sea, and just stop making hotspots in the world even hotter. So that would be step number one.
Mm-hmm.
Then, in December of 2021, Russia proposed a mutual security agreement,
yes,
or peace treaty to the United States. I read it when it was published and translated into English. I read that. I thought all of the provisions were quite reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had been in Congress then, I would have introduced legislation and tried to get support for it, saying the United States should agree with pretty much all of these proposals. Not conduct war games right on Russia's borders. Not establish bases or missile bases in the countries next to Russia, Poland, Romania, so on. Bring all of our land-based missiles out of Europe, out of wherever they are, back to the United States. If we're going to have land-based missiles, they should not be based outside the 50 states. These are reasonable proposals. The blob in Washington, the foreign policy, what should we call it, establishment, just kind of blew it off. They said, we might talk about some of these minor points, but on the major points, no, they're non-starters. They like that word. That was a huge mistake, because it led directly to the current conflict in Ukraine. Russia realized, and not just the leaders, the Russian Security Council, or its equivalent, but the Russian people realized that the status quo and the trend of constant NATO expansion, closer and closer to Russia, was not acceptable. It was security, a type of security for NATO and the NATO members, the EU, but it was making Russians feel very insecure. And so they tried to convince the West that there's no true security unless everybody's secure.
Yes.
So I endorse that idea, and I would have introduced the bill saying, do it. Agree to that.
Absolutely. That's. We'll continue into the other points that I was raising, but this is the intention of the Schiller Institute as well. In fact, we had a major conference April 9, which was really based on exactly this observation. I mean, no one is going to win a nuclear war between NATO and Russia. There's no victor there. There's just annihilation of humanity in all likelihood. The logic of nuclear war is that if you launch one, then all of them are going to go. And therefore, we had better figure out some kind of a framework, a new framework for a legal, as Dmitry Polyansky, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Russia to the United Nations in New York, has stated at our conference, you need an ironclad legal agreement between Russia and the United States and other parties to ensure that the indivisible security rights of every nation, indivisible security needs are acknowledged and dealt with. And it was disgusting. Blinken went, they didn't say a single thing about what these guys were asking. They just talked about secondary issues, nothing to actually address that fundamental question. So,
non-starters.
Say again?
It was all non-starters.
Non-starters, just pathetic. I mean, the quality of our diplomatic corps is heinous. You look at Michael McFaul, you want to retch. The guy is a disaster. In fact, I watched the late Stephen Cohen dismantle him in a debate. Did a brilliant job against Michael McFaul, who was a boor. But anyway,
I think as a group, the neocons, and they completely dominate Washington today, are the most dangerous, reckless, ignorant group of people in the world. The neocon ideology, okay, so let me define what I think a neocon is.
Please.
Neocon is someone who believes that the United States and a few favored allies have the right, or even sometimes the moral obligation, to overthrow governments, to invade countries, to starve their people through sanctions and economic blockades.
Yep.
To do anything we want to other countries if they have been labeled official enemies of Washington. That's a neocon. Total contempt for international law, total contempt for the idea that any other country should have freedom or sovereignty, the ability to make its own decisions. No, we know better. Neocons want to make policy in every country they can. And again, people are getting tired of it. So they need to go. They need to retire or take a vacation.
Yes.
And get out of the think tanks, get out of the State Department. Every government agency that has neocons should fire them.
I totally agree with you. Victoria Nuland should be fired, possibly from a cannon, and we should say goodbye to this for good. I mean, there is an American tradition that is in opposition to that. There's an American tradition, if you go back to John Quincy Adams, who was U.S. ambassador to Russia. There is a tradition that says we should have a community of nation states that act in a way that proceeds from mutual benefit. And, I think that there are many cases in our history. We've referenced Franklin Roosevelt, who's a crucial one, especially because of the specific role that he played in what we're dealing with today. This is the thing that really I'm secure in, and I want in my outlook, is that it will be required for U.S. and China to come together. They're going to have to address
Well, U.S. and China and Iran, just a whole bunch of countries. But U.S. and China, okay, definitely yes. U.S. and Russia, definitely yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I do have a difference in the idea of a multipolar world. I'm not. It's not that I think that. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm convinced of the idea you have to go past multipolar. You have to somehow create a relationship among nations that is based not merely on a certain sense of equality, but on the sense of the benefit of the other, which is that's where I'm looking at this. That basically the system is crashing. We're going to see a major financial blowout, and then at that point, the U.S. president should sit down with the president of China because they're the two biggest economies in the world. And it shouldn't be just the two of them. We're saying it should be everyone who's represented in this kind of discussion and reorganize the way that things work.
Okay, well, Asia is already reorganizing a parallel financial structure.
Yeah.
There's talk of replacing the dollar as the world's reserve currency with a basket of currencies plus commodities.
Yes.
Gold and, all kinds of ideas. I think they're all promising. And so I don't think the United States is yet at the point, our leaders I'm talking about, not the American people.
Right.
I don't think our leaders are at the point where we're willing to sit down and seriously negotiate with anyone. I think America may have to feel the impacts of all these backfiring, boomeranging sanctions back on the United States for a while before the leaders either are replaced or get the idea that we can't keep doing this. We have to start talking seriously with China, Russia, and other countries, or else we're going to be isolated in the world. So a dystopian vision that I have, that's one possible way things could develop, is a divorce between the West and the rest of the world. Far from isolating Russia, it will be the West that is isolating itself. The U.S., Canada, Western Europe, Australia. Not trading with anyone because our currency is, we won't be able to afford to buy anything from outside our country.
Yeah.
Because the dollar will have crashed, and we'll just sit there and fester while the rest of the world will go on developing and building high-speed rail, trading with each other, and we'll be just left as some kind of backwater. That's the dystopian vision that I have, and that's what I'd like to help
avoid.
Prevent.
Yeah. Well, I hear you. In fact, I've got some problem with my webcam that I'm trying to fix here for a quick moment. But I will say that is actually explicitly what the neocons are trying to achieve. Let me see if I can, decoupling, right?
I want the U.S. to be dominant again, but they can't get that. So let's see, maybe focus your camera.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. It's giving me a hard time.
Anyway, I don't think the neocons are going to get their wish.
Well, I guess my observation, I'm going to go ahead and do this and see if I can. Oh, I know how to do it. Okay. I'm still learning, Geoff, to be the full-time, person taking care of this at the same time that I'm talking to people. But I think that if I do this, Okay, I'll work on it, but I'm going to deal with it for now. So, if you go to the Henry Jackson Society, I covered this on the last program that we did. The Henry Jackson Society is a leading neocon institution. It's run out of London, and they have Marco Rubio and a bunch of the like modern neocon types endorsing this policy. Steve Bannon is on exactly the same policy of decoupling with China, and it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's not really what it would mean. It would have unimaginable impact.
I agree completely.
Evil impacts on our own economy. If we try to do that, that's like Great Depression territory.
I agree. So I think you've made a very good argument right now for putting you in the House as soon as possible, and really push. I encourage people to work with you and to figure out how we can create the kind of caucus of people who understand this kind of thing. Because there is this sort of inexorable change that's happening. And in the meanwhile, we have got to figure out how to get ourselves off of the track of nuclear war. I was really happy when I read about the fact that the day before the election, you sent out a mailer to absolutely everyone attacking, or as many people as you could reach, to attack Andy Barr for financing neo-Nazis. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, on the front of it, I had my motto.
Yeah, don't mind me. Keep going, please.
Rest of this campaign, the next 5 months. Unlike Andy Barr, I will never vote to send weapons to Nazis. And on the back, I had a montage of headlines and, pictures from mainstream media corporations like USA Today, New York Times, all these totally mainstream sources from 2014 until 2021, all trying to alert the public and alert members of Congress that some of these groups that we're sending weapons to in Ukraine are Nazis. They use the swastika and all that. So there are all these pictures on the back. And I said, Andy Barr cannot deny that he has known since 2014 or 2015 that the federal government has been sending weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. It's been reported in the media, and he can't deny it. And so I've taken it as a mission during the next 5 months to inform every voter in the 6th District that Andy Barr has known about this. He hasn't done anything about it. And today he is still urging President Biden to send more weapons, more than the $40 billion that the U.S. House and Senate recently approved. Mm-hmm. Without you people, a few representatives and a few senators opposed to it. So Andy Barr wants to send more. And what he's doing, what the federal government is doing, is actually putting weapons in the hands of Nazis. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in the Ukrainian military is a Nazi, that everybody in Ukraine, every Ukrainian citizen is a Nazi. No. Nazis represent a minority, possibly a small minority of the Ukrainian people. But ever since the coup in 2014 that was sponsored by Victoria Nuland mm-hmm. and the CIA, State Department, Ukraine has not been a democracy at all. It's been a puppet state of Washington. So the government since 2014, the last 8 years, has been totally controlled by U.S. State Department, CIA, the Pentagon, and heavily armed Nazi groups. They have dominated Ukraine from 2014 till now.
Absolutely.
And I'm just assuming that the people of Kentucky don't like Nazis, and are going to, get mad that we've been doing this for 8 years.
I'm really excited by that. I mean, I think if more and more people know that you won your primary days after sending out that particular mailing, it just defines a winning strategy. What you just stated. I mean, it seems to me with in addition, to there are other features I could name. I mean, one thing I would really love to do, Geoff, as part of the effort to help you get your seat in the Congress in the House is to encourage and you to come forward and make a big effort on the economic side of things as well. Because I have to tell you, I really do think, when I hear you speak this way, I get happy. And I also think to myself, there is a capability of the American people to force their Congress to go with something like GlassSteagall. Not that that's the only thing that's needed. We have a full program that we're committed to from LaRouche's economic standpoint. But GlassSteagall is the kind of thing that many people can recognize is needed in a condition of financial crisis. It's obvious that the U.S. is in an extraordinary economic financial crisis. People are talking about it more. Biden's poll numbers, the Democratic poll numbers in general, are very poor because of the situation. What do you think?
Would you back and then explain what that is?
Sure. So for people watching, the idea of GlassSteagall is that this was actually implemented in 1933. When we talk about Franklin Roosevelt's 100 days, if I remember correctly, this was on the 100th day announced. And it is the legislation that creates effectively a firewall between the physical economy and the speculative economy. And this is basically what it means is that we're going to ensure the government will never, ever be able to bail out speculators, and that if you're choosing to be a bank, you must either be a speculative bank or you will be a commercial bank. And if you're commercial, we're going to protect you, as with the other measures that FDR was able to get passed, like FDIC and so forth. But we will protect you. But if you're a speculator, then you're out to dry. And between... Yeah, go on, please.
Okay. Yeah, great. I like it.
Good. Okay. All right. We're making progress then. But no, go on.
For the 21st century, that some Democrats were proposing a few years ago. Haven't heard much about it lately, and I don't know how it compares to the original. But anyway, I think it's now clear what you're talking about and what needs to be done. One of the many things that need to be done.
Yeah.
I think we should also abolish the CIA.
Yeah. Talk to us about that. So abolish, and then what?
Well, we have supposedly 17 members of the intelligence community. And the CIA since 1947 has been the worst one. The most violent, the most destructive. They've been running drugs, addictive drugs, since they were founded, and still are today, even though Congress told them to stop. At a certain point, they never did. They've been dominating, infiltrating the mainstream media corporations. Instead of having, having reporters call up their CIA contact for a lead. We've got CIA or so-called ex-CIA people as the hosts of TV news shows, as frequent guests, commentators, right there, out in the open. And all of that is contrary to the CIA's founding charter. They're not supposed to conduct operations against, in the United States. But right now they view us as an enemy population, as if, as if we were all Russians or something. And we are to be propagandized. Completely illegal. So we've got these 17 agencies. CIA is the worst one. Why not save some money and get rid of the worst one? And we'll have 16 left to provide useful, accurate intelligence, because the CIA's intelligence is all wrong. So they messed up Afghanistan. I blame them.
Yep.
So, why keep the worst one around?
Okay, I love it. Very simple logic, very clear. I like it a lot. And I wanted to make sure, we had a couple more questions on our list, which we've got time. We've got until 9:30, but I want to make sure that I invite people who are watching to submit serious questions to Geoff. It's really great that he's been able to give some time to talk today. And I hope people are excited about what we can accomplish. I'm getting this fuzzy webcam again, so I'm going to cover it up and try to get my autofocus working again. But I'm not going to worry about it too much. Anyway, so, for example, what is it, you have expressed, I think, in the way that you've talked about things, your image of what a U.S. congressperson should be doing. But please develop it further and tell us, what is the point?
The point of being in Congress?
Or, the point of the Congress. What should the Congress be doing? Because people are so incredibly fed up with the Congress. I mean, the approval ratings for Congress are, of course, infamously low, and there's every reason for that to be the case. And you have people like, on both sides of the aisle, obviously it's a both side thing, but like AOC, who is clearly sort of, playing some kind of a role, and got all types of people directing her to make all types of PR moves, and she doesn't seem to have any principles at all. So what should people really expect from the U.S. Congress?
All right. So what the Congress should be doing? I'll try to talk about that. One, top priority, preventing a nuclear war. That's the end of the game. That's the end of humanity if that happens. So that's what I think. Congress is supposed to be, the House and Senate are supposed to be in charge of American foreign policies. But in recent decades, the House and Senate have abdicated their responsibility, and it's no longer the people who decide what our foreign policies are going to be. It has become a huge bureaucracy and dominated by neocons, and just a threat to human life on Earth. So that would be the first priority, is to prevent a nuclear war, and I think we should aim for complete elimination of all nuclear weapons worldwide. That will require intrusive inspections of every country, including the U.S. All right, so some of these are long-range goals. All right, the second priority is to ensure that the economy does not collapse, and the financial sector, does not collapse. So peace and prosperity. Capitalism has a tendency to go into boom and bust cycles throughout its several hundred-year history. The various institutions have been created to even out those cycles and not make the busts so bad and not make the booms so overinflated and so on. But they've been failing at their jobs. Peace, prosperity, freedom. We need to go back to the Bill of Rights. Right now it's being shredded. Fourth Amendment is the prohibition against unlawful search and seizure by the government. And it has been called the right to privacy. The whole Bill of Rights, the First Amendment.
Yes.
We just saw the current administration institute, without any congressional act at all, a Ministry of Truth.
Yep.
I don't want the government deciding what we're all going to be allowed to read and hear and see. That would make the founding fathers turn over in their grave. I think Jefferson said he would rather have a free press without a government than a government without a free press. That's approximately his quote. So, for a second there, he sounded like an anarchist. That's a good start.
Yes.
Peace and freedom.
I think that's a great start.
The House and Senate, that should be their job, their main job, to move toward those three things.
Thank you for developing that for us. And I want to sort of return, in a sense, to something that you mentioned before, that we have such waste, enormous waste of U.S. resources and capability by building these 800 plus military bases all around the world. The global, what is it called? Global strike policy of the neocons that says we should be able to hit any place in the world within 30 minutes is a big part of that process in the recent 30 years. But this is the question. I think this raises the important thought in relation to China, which is, how did they bring 800 million people out of poverty? And it is very clear that they have directed credit, not towards speculation, not towards military, unnecessary military expenditure. They do have a lot of military expenditure, but it's obviously because they're being surrounded by the United States primarily.
Defense.
Yes, exactly. And but they are extending their credit towards the North-South Water Project, the Three Gorges Dam, the greatest amount of high-speed rail, more high-speed rail in China than in the rest of the world combined. Within a few years, they'll have built enough high-speed rail to go around the world once if you stretched it out. And then they're taking that policy of credit directed towards infrastructure and industry, and they're taking it to other countries without demanding that they change their political stances. So please tell us about that and your reflections on what that might mean for the U.S.
Well, we can't beat them. If we can't beat them, we should join them.
Yeah, Jack Matlock, I think it's Jack Matlock, said almost exactly the same thing. Maybe I'm thinking of Chaz Freeman. Keep going, excuse me. Tell me more. It's really sad. Okay, so let me mention in passing the national security strategy of the United States. Yep.
That, I guess, gets updated every 4 years or so. Currently, the main theme of that strategy that's now in effect is to prevent any other country or combination of countries from developing enough military strength to be higher than the United States military strength. That's insane. That's what if every country had that strategy?
Mm-hmm.
What it would mean is a permanent arms race until the rockets start flying. That strategy. If and when I get to Washington, what I'm going to do is introduce a bill to simply nullify the current national security strategy of the United States. It's as if it were, 1952 rather than 2022.
Mm-hmm.
70 years out of date. That has to go, and replace it with nothing until the Congress comes up with a better vision for what our security needs and what our attitude toward the rest of the world should be. Right now, it's keep the U.S. in the #1 spot at all costs. That's just crazy. Okay, so in terms of joining the Belt and Road, well, yeah, we've got to close all these bases, bring our troops home. There are plenty of things that our soldiers could be doing. The example of the New Deal in the 1930s, the Army Corps of Engineers they could be building high-speed rail or, new dams in areas where that's environmentally safe. So hydropower, the Green New Deal in general, I'm in favor of that. There are plenty of things that could be done and should be done to make this country better and to catch up with China and Russia, catch up with these countries that are passing us right now because we're wasting it all on weapons and wars.
Thank you. I hope you adopt this affirmative outlook. I think that it's a crucial standard. I think that, we've had $500 million was determined to be allocated by the U.S. Congress specifically for negative coverage of the Belt and Road Initiative as part of the propagandizing of the United States population.
100 million?
And,
100 million with an
500 million, yeah, $500 million.
Yeah, so instead of joining them, we're trying to tear them down.
Yeah.
We can't beat them. So it's a peevish attitude. We can't beat you, so we're just going to cut you down so you don't pull ahead. That's not an inspiring vision for humanity as a whole.
Well, let's go to that question then, because I do want to know from you. This is a question we talk about. Where do you want the world to be in 50 years? What do you think it should look like? What's your biggest, if you could give your biggest vision? And I hope that there are some people watching now who are 20, 25, who, will be around in 50 years to really see this through.
Well, can I confine it to the United States?
As you please.
Well, all right, so it relates to the rest of the world also. And the first thing I would say is the United States should seek to become a genuine, productive, cooperative member of the Society of Nations. We've tried to dominate the world for far too long. It's not sustainable. So if we could just become a non-exceptional, great country, great nation, you can be a great country without trying to assert that you're the best ever. A member of the community of nations that treats nations with respect, that is able to come to agreements with other countries that are not based on dominating them. All right, so become a member of the community of nations. That would take us a long way to a more peaceful, cooperative world. And then, sure, join, start building high-speed rail across this country, Canada, through Central America. We could have a worldwide network where people trade with each other, not in an exploitative way, but where it's win-win for all the countries involved, where both countries, where the prices are fair and negotiated, and not, the opposite of imperialism.
Yes.
Where countries are free to try whatever government they want and not get overthrown or subverted, and trade with each other in a normal way. Was it Jefferson who said peaceful relations and trade with all countries and tangling alliances with none? So that's a vision both for the U.S. and the rest of the world, or our trading partners.
I love it. I think it's I think it's a bold and attractive vision, and it does harmonize with my own, which is the idea of the World Land Bridge, which is of course the name of our show, and the notion. I'm going to go further. I'm going to say I think that the great contributions, the advancements that are promised in the realm of fundamental science, in the commitment to fusion energy and the commitment to space exploration. We haven't had a chance to discuss this in depth, but I do want to state it's my view that this is the kind of thing that could revolutionize the world economy and create abundance for all peoples. So that's another element I'd like to add in there from my standpoint. But I have a question for you, Geoff, and let's see what it is here. You've sort of answered this, but I'm going to read the question in full, and you can choose how to approach it. You answered part of it. What are Mr. Young's plans once in Congress? Does he have people in mind he would work with, like Thomas Massie, etc.? I believe Mr. Young said his first issue is voting against Ukraine aid. So you kind of answered much of that, but the middle part you didn't address yet.
Yeah, basically, I want to work with anyone who is willing to, co-sponsor or work toward positive changes. I like Thomas Massie. He is the Republican representative from the 4th District of Kentucky, one district north of the 6th District. 6th is Lexington, Fayette, and shading toward eastern Kentucky. I've talked with him a number of times. I like a number of things he's done. Of course, I don't agree with him on every single issue. Nobody does. But I want to focus on important issues. I want to join the House Progressive Caucus. And I don't know, is the squad still accepting members? I want to join the squad. Basically, okay, so what I really would like to do is try to get the Democratic Party to once again become a peace party instead of a kind of Me Too war party, which I'm sorry to say it seems to have become recently, or over a number of years. So, work with anyone, talk with anyone. I'm not going to boycott talking with any member of the House or Senate and see what we can get done. But, it's possible that the Democratic Party will be the minority party after November. And if that's the case, I would like to help the Democratic Party be an effective opposition party in the minority and oppose the worst things that the Republicans may come up with.
Thank you, Geoff. Someone in the chat says that you should form a new, actually based squad. And
reality, how about that? Reality based.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be a great improvement. Someone asked a sharp question. Geoff, how will you prevent your campaign from being co-opted by establishment Democrats?
Well, it's easy. Right now, they won't talk to me. They can't co-opt me, so that's no. But I really want to make up with the Democratic Party of Kentucky. I think that the party should say, we support at least verbally all of our nominees at all levels. Vote blue no matter who. That's been the standard training for decades. I hear it every time. So this time, I think they should go back to the well-established pattern and inform all of the voters in Kentucky why they should vote blue.
Sounds good to me. I agree with you. They should be supporting you. If they knew what was good for them, then they would be doing it already to the hilt. So, okay, I have at least a couple of other things that come up, but we're running out of time here. So I just want to sort of give you a chance to tell people if they live in Kentucky or if they live in the 6th District or they live somewhere near, how can they help your campaign? Please tell the people.
Well, anyone in the United States can help. You go to my website, you can donate. I think Andy Barr now has over $2 million, and I have approximately nothing. I mean, donations have started to pick up after the May 17th primary, but fundraising, we have to do it. You can contact the campaign if you want to help on social media. You can do that from anywhere. If you want to help knock on doors, I have a field director who is going to organize the ground campaign. And just any way you want to help, just contact the campaign and we'll find a way for you to get involved. Young for Kentucky. The website is young4ky.com.
Excellent. Go on, please.
Find me on Facebook, Twitter, and you can find the website. So yes, we welcome everybody.
Great. Okay, very good. I guess in sort of wrapping it up, I do want to make a formal invitation to you on behalf of the LaRouche Organization and the Schiller Institute to participate in to help us to organize and to participate in this conference that we have coming up June 18th and 19th. Because I think that, Helga LaRouche's outlook is that time is rapidly running out, that we're basically living on borrowed time, and that we need to very quickly act in a unified, not unified necessarily, but in solidarity, I might say, to solve the big problems, to try to get the discussion going and to get ahead of the process that is unfolding right now, because some of us can see just how bad the situation is, but a large majority of American people cannot see that. And if you went to the American people and said, like you're doing right now, you're doing to them, you're saying, hey, we don't need a nuclear war with Russia. I mean, we can solve this another way. Then look at this, they vote for you. The people, there's a large group of people who, if they were appropriately presented what's actually happening and were given a sense that there are ways to solve the crisis, that they could respond. So I definitely want to invite you to participate in that conference, because it will be an international effort to have that kind of discussion. And I want to invite all of our listeners to do the same. And otherwise, I just want to thank you for your time, and thank you for the conversation, for the very lively and happy dialogue, because it's always happy to find people who have minds in motion and who are standing for principle. And there are other things I really would love to talk to you about again in the future, like you mentioned to me in our conversations, your recent 180-degree turn on nuclear, so that you've found yourself now being supportive of nuclear power. I think that's fascinating. I'd like to learn about it from you. But let me, yeah, go on. Excuse me.
I really don't know if fusion will ever be commercially viable or not, but yeah. I had been anti-nuclear power for 40 years, and recently read some things by an author who convinced me that, with peak oil approaching, it's probably necessary. Now, it has to be in a safe way, right? You can't have more Chernobyls or Fukushima disasters. It has to be safe, has to be better designed. But yeah, I'm open to that as an energy source, because just by sheer necessity is going to force us to do it.
That might be an interesting discussion in the future. I think I have a different outlook on what is the sheer necessity, and so that could be a useful point of dialogue. But I really appreciate you sharing that. So let me turn it over to you to complete your comments and speak to the audience. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you for inviting me. You can tell I love to talk about politics, national, local, any kind. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I hope that the conference produces some good results, and we move forward in all kinds of ways from where we are now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Geoff. Okay, so people visit his website, and have a wonderful evening, Geoff. Thanks for spending time with us.